Going to the Houston bridal show together, Heidi even tags Megan Humphrey in April of 2013, saying the two were picking out baby shower invites together.
From calculated, cold-blooded murders by women to shocking courtroom twists, these female killers have left a lasting mark on history. The insane sentences they received have sparked outrage and left many questioning whether justice was truly served. One chilling case is Marjorie Ann Orbin, a story that will make you rethink everything you know about betrayal and greed. Let's dive in.
And back in 2013, Heidi tagged Megan Humphrey in several Facebook posts calling her bestie. The two were tagged eating together at Longhorn Steakhouse here in Houston.
Megan Fieramusca and Heidi Broussard became close friends at church camp in the late 1990s. Over the years, their bond grew, with Heidi often calling Megan her best friend on social media. What seemed like a friendship built on shared experiences and mutual trust would later unravel into a tragedy beyond comprehension. In 2013, Heidi welcomed her first child, and 6 years later she discovered she was pregnant again. Megan, who was also expecting, was overjoyed for her friend. However, unknown to Heidi, Megan had been secretly creating an elaborate web of lies, including fake baby registries in department stores, pretending to prepare for a child that never existed. Megan's obsession with the idea of motherhood, and specifically Heidi's motherhood, was beginning to spiral.
Whenever anything comes down, because she's going to see my face, and I'm going to bring a picture of Heidi, and I want to show it to her, Heidi and her family. I got 2 pictures.
When Heidi gave birth to her daughter in November 2019, Megan's behavior started to grow more unsettling. She was present during Heidi's labor, holding her friend's hand, but something felt off. As Heidi's baby girl entered the world, Megan became sad and left before the baby was born. Megan even intruded on intimate family moments, such as when the baby met her grandfather for the first time.
And I want to show it to her. I want her to see face to face what she did.
But for now, all she can do is remember Heidi for the special daughter she was.
On December 12, 2019, Heidi dropped her oldest child off at school and then vanished with her newborn daughter. A missing persons report was filed, and law enforcement began searching for the young mother. Neighbors recalled seeing Heidi leave her apartment with Megan, and despite initial concerns, there was no indication of foul play. Days passed without a trace, and the search intensified. But just days before Christmas, the unthinkable happened. On December 20th, Heidi's body was discovered in a duffel bag in the trunk of a car outside a house. Inside the house, police found Megan with Heidi's baby. What was once a missing persons case had tragically turned into something much darker.
As for Fieramusca, she remains in the Travis County Jail. Her attorneys issued a much longer statement today, which you can read in full at kview.com.
Initially, Megan was charged with kidnapping and evidence tampering. But as investigators delved deeper, the truth came to light. Megan had strangled Heidi with a leash and her own hands. She had murdered her best friend, then taken her baby in a horrifying attempt to create a life that wasn't hers to claim.
Judge Selena Alvarenga denied the motion to suppress, shutting down Fieramusca's team's request, meaning evidence and statements obtained can be used moving forward.
The investigation revealed that Megan had deceived everyone around her, even her ex-boyfriend, Christopher Green. He had been living with Megan after their romantic relationship ended, and although Megan claimed to be pregnant, he never saw her belly grow. One day, he came home to find a baby lying on the bed, but Megan was distant about the details of the birth. Christopher grew suspicious and eventually came forward, concerned for the safety of the child.
In court today, Fieramusca was sentenced as part of a plea deal. The hearing gave Broussard's family an opportunity to address her in a victim impact statement.
After the truth was revealed, the baby was placed into protective custody and eventually returned to Heidi's family, where she belonged. In February 2023, Megan pled guilty to capital murder, accepting a plea deal that spared her from a life sentence, but still resulted in a 55-year sentence. She will be eligible for parole after serving 27 years.
Heidi's hugs were strong, full of love. They lingered in the atmosphere. I still feel them now.
As the verdict was announced, Megan's face crumpled. Tears streamed down as the reality of what she had done to her best friend, Heidi, finally seemed to sink in. But for Heidi's family, it likely felt far too little, far too late. During the sentencing, Heidi's mother addressed Megan, her grief palpable as she spoke of her daughter. Her voice broke as she said they missed Heidi, who was full of so much love and life. So much.
When I think of her, which is every moment and everything I do, I ask, what would Heidi say or think?
Megan Fieramusca's horrific crime of murdering her best friend for her baby is truly chilling. But the case of Marjorie Orbin is just as diabolical, with its own dark twists and shocking revelations. Marjorie Ann Orbin's life in Las Vegas appeared to be one of glitz and glamour. As a showgirl, she danced at some of the most well-known venues in the city, captivating audiences with her beauty and charisma. But behind the scenes, Marjorie was a woman searching for something deeper. She met Jay Orbin, a 26-year-old man known for his warm heart and easygoing nature. Jay, drawn to Marjorie, pursued her, and after a few dates, she began to see him as more than just another face in the crowd. They shared a night of dancing, and although Marjorie liked him, she felt Las Vegas couldn't provide her with everything she was looking for, so she left for Florida, where she had grown up. While in Florida, Marjorie reconnected with Michael J. Peter, a wealthy businessman who owned high-end gentlemen's clubs around the world. Michael had known Marjorie since she was a teenager, and their relationship quickly grew serious. He made Marjorie a star dancer and choreographer in his clubs, and he even gave her a role in one of his films. Soon, they were engaged. But despite the luxury and success Michael brought her, Marjorie felt the relationship wasn't what she had hoped for. Michael's wandering eye became a source of tension, and eventually, Marjorie ended their engagement, returning to Las Vegas. In 1993, Marjorie and Jay crossed paths again. A decade had passed since they had last seen one another, but the connection they once shared quickly reignited. Jay, now living in Phoenix and building a successful business, kept in touch with Marjorie frequently. Marjorie had always dreamt of having children, and Jay was eager to start a family. He offered to pay for fertility treatments, and soon, Marjorie moved to Phoenix to be with him. The two married in a quiet ceremony at the Little White Wedding Chapel in Las Vegas, and soon after, Marjorie became pregnant with their son. In the fall of 2004, something tragic unfolded. Jay's mother couldn't reach him, and after a week of unanswered calls, she began to grow concerned. When she spoke to Marjorie, her worry only deepened. Marjorie seemed unmoved, insisting Jay was simply away on a business trip. As more time passed with no word from Jay, his friends pushed Marjorie to report him missing. As detectives investigated Jay's disappearance, they couldn't ignore the stark contrast between Marjorie's behavior and the circumstances. She appeared calm, almost indifferent. In the weeks following his disappearance, Marjorie made large purchases, including a grand piano, and withdrew a significant sum of money from Jay's business account. Her actions raised red flags, but it wasn't until nearly 2 months later that the truth began to emerge.
That I don't make an error, and I don't mean cover my behind and hide a lie. I don't mean protect anyone else. I don't mean that at all.
Jay's dismembered body was found in a Rubbermaid container. The discovery, while horrific, led the investigators directly back to Marjorie, especially when surveillance footage showed her purchasing the same container just days before Jay went missing. This evidence, though circumstantial, was enough to point to Marjorie as the one responsible for her husband's death. Marjorie was arrested in December 2004 and charged with murder. As the trial unfolded, the prosecution painted a picture of a woman who, once she achieved her dream of motherhood, no longer had any use for her husband. They argued that Marjorie had grown indifferent to Jay, wanting only his money and willing to do anything to get it. The theory was that Marjorie shot Jay in their garage while their son slept inside, then dismembered his body before disposing of it in the Rubbermaid container. While they did not have the murder weapon or the saw, the footage from Lowe's played a crucial role in the prosecution's case. After an 8-month trial, the jury deliberated for only 7 hours before returning a guilty verdict. Marjorie was sentenced to life in prison, and the pain of her actions reverberated far beyond the courtroom. While the outward glamour of Marjorie's life may have captivated those around her, her actions revealed a woman driven by greed, manipulation, and a cold disregard for human life. Jay Orbin, a man who had trusted and loved Marjorie, paid the ultimate price for her twisted ambitions. Like Marjorie Orbin, Molly Martins also took the life of her husband. But unlike Marjorie, Molly is walking free today, leaving many to question the fairness of her case.
Sent me messages requesting that I contact him regarding his children. It was emotional. He had lost his wife and there were 2 babies.
After losing his wife, Mags, in 2006, Jason Corbett was left to care for their 2 young children, Jack and Sarah, while grappling with his own loss. In his search for support, he hired Molly Martins, an American au pair, who quickly grew close to his children. Over time, Jason and Molly became romantically involved, and they married in 2011. However, Molly's behavior began to raise alarms among Jason's family, with suspicions about her past and her relationship with Mags.
Molly Martins met Jason Corbett, a widower in Ireland, in 2008 when she served as the family au pair, taking care of his 2 young children. In 2011, the couple married.
The family noticed troubling inconsistencies in Molly's claims, including that she had known Mags personally, which Jason's family refuted. Despite these concerns, Jason, feeling isolated in his new life in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, seemed determined to make the marriage work, even as tensions grew. He began expressing a desire to return to Ireland with his children, a place where he felt more at home and connected to his cultural roots, especially rugby, a sport that was central to his life. Molly, however, seemed reluctant to move, leading to mounting friction between the couple.
Molly Martins Corbett and her father Tom Martin sat down with us pre-trial to tell us their version of events.
What do you hope to get across today? The truth.
In August 2015, the tension boiled over. Jason was found dead at the hands of Molly and her father, Tom Martins, who claimed they acted in self-defense. Tom stated that he intervened when he saw Jason allegedly choking Molly, using a baseball bat to stop him. Molly, on the other hand, maintained she defended herself by using a paving stone. Their version of events were inconsistent and troubling, particularly when an autopsy revealed that Jason had suffered multiple blows to the head, far beyond what could have been explained by an act of self-defense.
And when he would get mad, what would he do? He would physically and verbally hurt her mom. Did you see him physically hurt her? Once or twice.
As the investigation unfolded, Jason's sister Tracy became a vocal advocate for justice, suspecting that Molly had played a role in Jason's death. The case became even more complex when Jason's children, Jack and Sarah, who had initially provided statements supporting Molly and Tom's story, later recanted, suggesting they had been influenced or coached by Molly.
Molly is apparently caught between a rock and a hard place. Without a legal adoption, she has no shot of custody in the event of a divorce. She says the stakes are too high to simply walk away.
Financial motives surfaced when it was revealed that Molly stood to gain a substantial sum from Jason's life insurance policy. This, combined with the inconsistencies in the accounts provided by Molly and Tom, led investigators to conclude that their claims of self-defense were likely fabricated. The evidence, including expert testimony and forensic findings, painted a clearer picture of the crime, and Molly and Tom were arrested and charged with second-degree murder.
A Superior Court judge set a pretrial date for Tom Martins and Molly Corbett today. The father and daughter had their initial conviction overturned by the state Supreme Court. That happened last year. They've been out on bond.
During the trial, the defense struggled to explain the significant evidence against Molly and her father Tom. Despite their attempts to claim self-defense, the court was presented with testimony from experts who contradicted their claims. In the end, both Molly and Tom were convicted and sentenced to prison. Yet, the case took an unexpected turn in 2020, when North Carolina Appeals Court ordered a retrial. The North Carolina Supreme Court upheld this decision in 2021, leading to the release of Molly and Tom on bail.
With what I assume to be two probation officers sitting in the driver's seat and the passenger seat, I also saw her wave from the back seat. I'm not quite sure if she was waving at members of the media, at the building itself, or some of the construction workers that were nearby.
Molly Martins appeared hopeful and all smiles as she walked free from prison. She got into the back of a police car, looking forward to a new life. However, Jason's family didn't think justice was served.
And served more than 3.5 years, but their convictions were later overturned by the state Supreme Court, which ordered a new trial.
The Corbett family, particularly Tracy, was devastated by the turn of events. After serving only a short sentence, Molly and Tom were released in June 2024. This decision sparked outrage as Tracy and others felt that the justice system had failed to hold the Martins accountable for Jason's death. Unlike the others we've discussed, Kiren Labato's case stands out for a heartbreaking reason. She was wrongfully convicted, a tragic twist that highlights the flaws in the legal system.
Attorneys for Labato say while $34 million is a large lump sum, no monetary value amounts to the damage she's been put through after spending 16 years behind bars when convicted twice for the murder.
In 2001, the brutal murder of Durant Bailey sent shockwaves through Las Vegas. The 44-year-old Bailey was found dead in a dumpster, his body bearing signs of a violent attack. What followed would be a legal nightmare for one woman, Kiren Labato. But did she really kill Bailey? Or was she wrongfully convicted?
When convicted twice for the murder, both in 2002 and 2006. Labato's lawsuit claims she had been wrongfully targeted by Las Vegas Metro Police after having defended herself against.
Kiren Labato was not immediately suspected of involvement in Bailey's murder. It wasn't until more than 10 days later that authorities began questioning her. During the police interrogation, Kiren did make a statement that would prove pivotal. She acknowledged that she had once stabbed a man in the groin during an altercation. The police took this as a potential confession to Bailey's murder, but Kirsten later explained that she was simply describing a separate incident, not confessing to the crime.
Labato and her attorneys have maintained since her first trial.
She wasn't even in Las Vegas at the time that Duran Bailey was killed.
But proving that point was not a quick process.
Prosecutors, however, believed otherwise. They speculated that Labato had killed Bailey during a dispute over sex and drugs, citing her known history of methamphetamine use. Despite their theory, Labato's defense team maintained she was innocent. She stood firm, refusing a plea deal that would have reduced her sentence to 3 years in prison for manslaughter.
And James LaRochelle knew she could not have committed the crime and fabricated evidence against her. On top of the $34 million award, Labato won $10,000.
Kirsten's trial began in May 2002. Despite her insistence on innocence and her alibi, she was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to an extremely harsh 40 to 100 years in prison. This conviction would ignite years of legal battles as Kirsten continued to assert her innocence and fight the system that she believed had wrongfully condemned her.
Through from the age of 18, barely an adult and all of 100 pounds, when police arrested her for the murder of this homeless man, Duran Bailey. They said she beat him and stabbed him to death.
In 2006, a retrial offered a glimmer of hope for Kirsten. This time, the jury convicted her of voluntary manslaughter instead of first-degree murder, and she was sentenced to 13 to 45 years. While it was a reduced sentence, Labato's case still remained deeply troubling, especially as new evidence began to emerge that suggested her innocence.
And in October, a state court issued Labato this certificate of innocence, which was the subject of this letter from the sheriff Kevin McMahill and district attorney Steve Wolfson, asking for an investigation.
Determined to clear her name, Kirsten filed a writ of habeas corpus in 2010. This petition presented 79 grounds for a new trial, including claims of actual innocence. One of the most compelling aspects of her petition was the evidence showing she had been in Panica, Nevada when Bailey was killed, proof that she could not have committed the murder. Despite this new evidence, a judge denied Kirsten's petition in 2011, ruling that it didn't warrant a new trial. This was a devastating blow for Kirsten, but she refused to give up. She appealed the decision to the Nevada Supreme Court, but her appeal was also dismissed in 2012.
Against an unrelated rape attempt over a month prior to Bailey's murder. However, new evidence presented by the New York Innocence Project in 2017 granted Labato's January 2018 release.
In addition to fighting for a new trial, Kirsten's legal team filed a petition for DNA testing of the crime scene evidence. The Innocence Project agreed to cover the cost of testing, believing it could prove her innocence. But the Clark County District Attorney's Office opposed the request, and a judge once again rejected the petition.
We don't have an admission.
After hearing the verdict, Labato issued a statement saying, quote, "I'm so grateful to my attorneys lovey for taking my case when no one else would help me, and for working so hard on it."
Despite these setbacks, public support for Kirsten continued to grow. An online petition calling for the DNA testing gained traction, and more people began to question the fairness of her conviction. Finally, in 2017, Kirsten received some unexpected but much needed good news. A judge ordered her release from prison. After years of legal battles, Kirsten was finally free.
I have to start over. You know, my life is beginning again, so I have to get everything.
A Nevada woman convicted for a 2001 murder and sexual mutilation of...
However, her freedom was delayed by a brief period when it was revealed that she had been convicted of conspiracy to commit sexual contact with a prisoner. She was temporarily transferred to the Clark County Detention Center to serve an additional year. But in January 2018, a judge ruled that Kirsten had served enough time, and she was released once again.
This morning, a court spokesperson said a judge ordered Kristen Labato to be released. There you see her. She was 18 when she was first arrested, but she has always maintained her innocence.
Kirsten Labato's reaction upon her release was one of mixed emotions as she tried to process the years of her life lost in prison. After being wrongfully convicted and spending over a decade incarcerated, Kirsten expressed feelings of disbelief and relief. In her first interviews after being released, she spoke about the emotional toll of her wrongful conviction and the determination it took to keep fighting for her freedom.
I have to start over. You know, my life is beginning again, so I have to get everything.
A Nevada woman convicted for a 2001 murder and sexual mutilation of...
But Kirsten's fight wasn't over. In 2024, a civil trial jury ruled that the Las Vegas police and 2 detectives involved in her case had fabricated evidence and intentionally inflicted emotional distress on her. The jury awarded Kirsten $34 million in compensatory damages from the Las Vegas Police Department and $10,000 in punitive damages from each of the retired detectives involved. Prepare yourself for the chilling case of Kiana Burns, a story of unexpected tragedy that rocked her family and left a trail of unanswered questions.
Company and drove 18-wheelers. He previously worked at Frito-Lay. And 36-year-old Catherine Price worked at Robins Air Force Base for the 116th Air Control Wing.
Kiana Burns was a woman who everyone thought had it all. She appeared to be a loving wife, mother, and influencer. However, what was going on behind closed doors would shock the residents of Sandy Springs.
Verella and Kiana Burns are entrepreneurs from Atlanta. The married couple are...
On November 26, 2021, the peaceful suburban town of Sandy Springs, Georgia, was shaken to its core when 2 gunshots echoed through a quiet neighborhood. When police arrived at the Burns residence, they discovered a shocking crime scene. Kiana Burns, a popular influencer, shot her husband Ronell before turning the gun on herself.
Kiana Burns. Kiana Burns is an insurance agent and owner of Critique Designs Beauty and Barber.
In the weeks before the tragic incident, there were signs that trouble was brewing in the Burns marriage. Just 2 weeks before the shooting, Kiana shocked her followers by taking to Facebook Live to address significant changes in her life. With over 16,000 followers on Instagram and nearly 5,000 Facebook friends, Kiana's fans wondered what was going on in her marriage.
Inspirational quotes and preaches motivation to her followers.
Kiana revealed that she and her husband, along with 5 of their 8 children, had relocated to the Atlanta area to expand their businesses. She explained that she and her husband were co-owners of For His Glory Ministries, Critique Designs Beauty and Barber Salon, and Primerica Insurance. In the Facebook Live video, Kiana shed light on her emotional state, expressing her need for emotional support.
10-year-old Caleb Miles says his mom woke him up Tuesday morning saying she had to rush to his uncle's house, so he went along.
So I got there, I seen all the police and stuff, and I'm just like, what?
Only hours before the tragedy occurred, Kiana posted a video of herself singing and dancing with her child. Luckily, at the time of the shooting, the child was safely in the care of their grandparents. When the news of Kiana and Ronell's deaths spread throughout the Atlanta area, their friends and family were shell-shocked. Those around them celebrated their selflessness, love, and care for one another. One close friend expressed disbelief on Facebook, stating that the couple's wealth had not altered their down-to-earth and humble nature.
It's Air Force Base for the 116th Air Control Wing. Family members say the couple has been married for 11 years. They have 3 children and were members of Fellowship Bible Baptist Church.
8 years before the tragic events unfolded, Ronell Burns appeared on the popular television show Divorce Court. Back then, he was in the middle of a contentious divorce from his first wife. During the episode, Ronell accused his ex-wife of cheating, alleging that she had engaged in illicit affairs while he was away on business trips. However, the ex-wife refuted these claims, alleging that Ronell was the unfaithful one. Step into the heartbreaking and harrowing case of Cynthia Verella, a mother whose actions shook an entire community. What drove her to commit the unthinkable?
Police say it was one of the worst child abuse cases they've ever seen. According to investigators, Verella Casals abused her son Omari and beat him to death 3 years ago.
In 2013, a 9-year-old boy named Omari Verella Casals lost his young life at the hands of his own mother. Omari's younger sister, who was only 5 years old at the time, witnessed the tragic events and tried to intervene, urging their mother to stop kicking and hitting him. Unfortunately, her pleas were ignored. According to Omari's loved ones, he had been subjected to relentless mistreatment at the hands of his biological mother, Cynthia, over his short life. The autopsy conducted on Omari's body revealed he had sustained severe internal bleeding from blunt force trauma. This devastating discovery shattered any hopes that Omari had fallen from a toy horse, as Cynthia initially claimed.
Casals answered our questions while being taken to jail.
It was an accident. I was disciplining him and I kicked him the wrong way. It was an accident.
When detectives questioned Cynthia about her son's death, she initially denied any involvement. However, as the evidence against her mounted, her claims of innocence began to crumble. The inconsistencies in her statements and the overwhelming physical evidence ultimately led the police to charge Cynthia with murder in relation to Omari's death.
It was recommended Verella Casals remain jailed on $100,000 cash-only bond.
The state's concurring, we believe $100,000 cash only.
In an attempt to evade justice, Cynthia tried to claim she was incompetent to stand trial. However, the judge ruled otherwise, determining that she was mentally fit to stand trial. Cynthia's husband, Omari's stepfather, was found guilty of tampering with evidence and acting with reckless disregard for human life. He was sentenced to life in prison.
Is fit to stand trial after allegedly killing her 9-year-old son, Omari. This comes just months after her husband, Stephen Casaus, was put behind bars.
Astonishingly, the judge decided to give him a reduced sentence of 14.5 years, as he has already served 9 years in prison. This reduction means that the stepfather will be released in just 5 more years. In May of 2016, Cynthia pleaded guilty to 6 counts, including second-degree murder. She was sentenced to 40 years in prison in a stunning plea deal.
Cynthia Verella Casaus, CR 2014-00203.
During her sentencing, Cynthia spoke of her love for Omari, breaking down in tears as she addressed the judge. Despite her crimes, she expressed her remorse and begged for forgiveness. However, her sister Sylvia, who had adopted Cynthia's surviving children, had a different story to tell.
I will never understand why all this happened, Your Honor. My sister will have to live with that, what she did to her child Omari.
Sylvia addressed the court, expressing her forgiveness towards her sister. However, she made it clear that she wanted to see Cynthia face a long sentence. She shed light on the tender age of Omari at the time of his death, emphasizing that he had dreams and goals that he would never get to fulfill. Cynthia's other children, who saw the assault on Omari, asked Sylvia, "Auntie, can't Omari be fixed? Can't God or the doctor fix him?"
All rise.
In a powerful and emotional letter, Cynthia's daughter wrote to the judge, expressing her desire for her mother to remain behind bars. The letter, which was read aloud during the sentencing hearing, left the courtroom in tears. Cynthia's daughter, now 7 years old, bravely expressed her deepest fears and the nightmares that still haunt her. Her words echoed the sentiments of countless victims of domestic violence, urging the judge to keep her mother away to protect her safety and well-being. Cynthia Verella's shocking crime was a moment of unthinkable violence, but the next case is equally disturbing. Anna Marie Jitani, a woman whose brutal actions towards an innocent victim reveal a chilling disregard for life.
January, 40-year-old Anna Marie Jitani pled guilty to the December 2013 murder of her husband, Tony. He was stabbed to death in the couple's North Bexar County home.
On the night of December 5, 2013 at 9:30 p.m., a Bexar County Sheriff's deputy responded to a domestic violence call at the Jitani residence. The deputy arrived to witness a heated altercation between 29-year-old Tony and 38-year-old Anna Marie. Tony, who had expressed a desire to leave, found himself in a confrontation with his wife, who refused to let him leave the house.
To stab her husband, 29-year-old Tony Jitani, to death. According to the police report, he was stabbed 17 times, 3 times as emergency responders arrived at the couple's Northwest Bexar County home.
According to deputy statements, Anna Marie grabbed a knife and stabbed Tony multiple times in the upper body. The deputy intervened and tried to subdue Anna Marie, but it was already too late. Tony succumbed to his injuries and was pronounced dead at University Hospital.
She's since changed her mind about that plea.
I am not guilty of what they're saying that I did in cold blood.
In the aftermath of the tragic incident, Anna Marie was arrested and charged with her husband's murder. Her bond was set at $250,000. 3 years later, in February 2016, District Judge Steve Hilbig sentenced Anna Marie to 25 years in prison as part of a plea deal.
I am guilty of defending my life and my children's.
She claims she had ineffective counsel, that her lawyers only wanted to talk about a plea bargain.
During Anna Marie's sentencing hearing, Alfred Jitani, Tony's father, delivered a powerful and emotional statement to the court, addressing his daughter's killer directly. He declared, "I do not forgive you for murdering Tony, my son. I curse you for what you have done. I wish you nothing but terrible things in this life, and that when you die, you burn in hell."
We didn't talk about trial, we didn't talk about strategy, we didn't talk about anything like that.
And that her lawyer, David Christian, rushed her into agreeing to the plea bargain that called for a 25-year prison term.
Tony's mother, Jamal Jitani, also had the opportunity to address Anna Marie. With tears streaming down her face, she expressed her anger and desire for justice. She stated, "I pray that you rot in your prison cell."
That called for a 25-year prison term.
Christian took exception to Jitani's testimony. He said they went over the plea agreement several times.
Under the laws, Anna Marie is obligated to serve half of her sentence before becoming eligible for parole. However, despite pleading guilty, she sought a new trial 2 months after sentencing. Anna Marie said she had ineffective counsel when she accepted the plea deal.
He testified that she was not rushed into signing. He said that he advised her that given the facts of the case, a plea bargain was in her best interest.
Other than being under immense amount of pressure.
In her request for a new trial, Anna Marie argued that her legal counsel failed to provide adequate representation and advice. She believed that if she had been properly guided, she would have made a different decision regarding the plea deal. However, her attorneys, David Christian and Pat Hancock, insisted that they had thoroughly reviewed the case with Anna Marie and concluded that taking a plea deal was in her best interests.
She was not coerced, threatened, led the wrong way.
Judge Steve Hilbig denied Jitani's motion for a new trial. Her lawyer tells me he'll appeal.
Despite the efforts of her legal team, Judge Hilbig denied Anna Marie's plea for a retrial. The judge deemed the evidence presented insufficient to overturn the initial verdict. Anna Marie's newest attorney spoke to the media, stating that he plans to appeal the recent ruling. This new attorney, who has joined the case amidst much speculation, believes there are valid grounds for an appeal. Prepare to uncover the dark and twisted tale of Kristen Rossum, a woman whose life seemed picture perfect until it unraveled into a shocking story of betrayal, addiction, and murder. From a young age, Kristen Rossum developed an interest in smoking cigarettes and drinking beer. She was in high school when she started this habit. It was not sure what she needed them for, but she soon gravitated towards marijuana. However, she said it had a little effect, so in 1992, Rossum started using meth. In 1994, she suffered a relapse and had to leave university. Eventually, she soon conquered her addiction and enrolled at San Diego University. There, she met Greg DeVillers, and they started dating. Rossum graduated with honors in 1998 and started working as a toxicologist. She got married to DeVillers in 1999. This happy life didn't last long because Rossum started an affair with her boss, Dr. Michael Robertson, in 2000. Later that year, DeVillers was horrified to learn that not only had she been cheating on him, she had also continued using meth. She got access to the drug with help of her lover, who was also her enabler. DeVillers threatened to expose both of them to the medical examiner if she did not quit her job and leave Robertson. On November 6, 2000, Rossum called 911 at night and said that DeVillers had committed suicide. When paramedics arrived, they were met with a strange sight. DeVillers was unresponsive in their bed, and there were rose petals sprinkled around him. He was pronounced dead, and Rossum told the police he had committed suicide. Despite this, DeVillers' family said this wasn't true and that he was not suicidal. Reluctantly, the police opened a homicide investigation. Because Rossum worked as a toxicologist at the medical center in San Diego, DeVillers' autopsy was outsourced to an outside lab to avoid conflict of interest. 1 month after DeVillers died, Rossum and Robertson were fired because of Rossum's meth habit and Robertson enabling her. Soon enough, the test results came back and they showed that he had 7 times the lethal dose of fentanyl in his system. Something was off and the police began to take the case seriously. 7 months after DeVillers' murder, Rossum was arrested and charged with murder. During interrogation, she claimed that she had gone to work in the morning and returned home in the afternoon to give her sick husband a bowl of soup. She went back to work before she returned home around 7 p.m. She said it was after she showered and entered the bedroom that she discovered DeVillers lying motionless on the bed.
2 more breaths. Count this chest 15 more times. Okay, 2 more breaths. You're doing fine.
The 911 call sounded like Rossum had been administering CPR, but this didn't clear her of guilt. She was charged to court where a receipt for a single red rose that Rossum bought was presented. The defense claimed that DeVillers had crumpled the rose around himself after using fentanyl. However, the amount of fentanyl in his system showed that this wasn't possible. Tests also revealed that the dose of fentanyl had been administered around the time that Rossum went home and gave her husband soup. Prosecutors claimed that Rossum had killed her husband to hide her affair and her meth addiction. So, on November 12, 2002, Rossum was found guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole and a $10,000 fine. In a very short clip, she could be seen crying. Kristen Rossum killed her husband to hide her addiction and affair. Michelle Despain killed hers so she could be with another person and cash in on her husband's death.
Kristen, your father.
My father?
Yes, ma'am. Your father will be arrested for murder. I have all the information, all the evidence I need.
Not Mark's father.
No, ma'am. Your father.
Mark Despain was a successful property investor and real estate appraiser in Jonesboro. He lived a fairly successful life with his wife Michelle and his stepdaughter, Michelle's daughter from a previous relationship. Mark Despain had been in a family business with his parents before Michelle came along. Because of the constant arguments based on lies that Michelle had been feeding her husband about his parents, Mark and his parents soon fell out, and he started his business with Michelle managing their money. Michelle intended to isolate Mark from his family so she could do as she liked with his finances. So, in another desperate attempt to do so, she had her daughter take intimate photos of herself and had them sent to Jack's phone. She claimed that Jack Despain, Mark's father, had forced her daughter to take those pictures. Soon, Jack was arrested and his wife, Tana Despain, left him. After a couple of years, Michelle's daughter started to cave and kept on mixing details about the alleged incident. Because of this, Jack was released and his wife came back to him, realizing he wasn't an evil person. This already damaged their relationship, and Michelle Despain succeeded in isolating her husband from his family. This gave her the chance to spend Mark's money on her lover, a much younger banker where she worked. Soon, Mark started failing and somehow ended up in debt of over $1 million. After Michelle learned that Mark had bought a life insurance policy, she began to plan something deadly.
What happened to your husband, ma'am? He's dead. Ma'am, I need you to take a deep breath, okay, and tell me what's going on.
In August 2011, Michelle came back from work and found Despain dead in their home. He had been shot in the head and the chest. Michelle called 911 and the police first thought that this was just a burglary gone wrong. However, when they realized that things robbers would take were in place, they got suspicious. It also didn't help that Michelle and her father, Carl Kelly, kept pointing and accusing Jack Despain of killing his son.
I mean, I hate to think that his dad would do anything like that, because it is his son, but he isn't. He's just very...
With the conflicting stories and the fact that the case didn't have much evidence to go on, Mark's body was released to Michelle and he was buried. Even in death, Michelle isolated Mark from his family, and they were only allowed to see Mark right before he was buried. The case was stumped until the police received a tip from an anonymous person. They were told that a man named Terrence Barker was bragging that he had killed Mark. They were also informed that on the day of the murder, an old blue Mercedes was circling the area of Mark's home. Barker was arrested and he quickly admitted that he had killed Mark. However, he didn't know him, and he was just offered thousands of dollars to carry out the hit. He said that the person that approached him was Johnny Hubbard, one of Mark's tenants in the buildings he owned. Michelle's father was a rent collector in the building where Johnny was living. Coincidentally, Johnny owned the Mercedes that the police learned about. After Johnny was arrested, he quickly implicated Carl Kelly, saying that he had given him access to Mark's house.
If you don't do what he tells you to do, you get on the street. Oh, well, yeah.
Kelly was arrested, and when Michelle learned about it, she turned on him, saying that he probably killed her husband so he could have a share in Mark's massive life insurance policy. However, when detectives got access to the phones of Kelly, Barker, Johnny, and Michelle, they found out that there was more to the story. On the day of the murder, Michelle had texted her father, "It has to be today." She then tricked Mark to get out of the house while Kelly gave Barker access to the house. Michelle was arrested and charged with the murder of her husband.
My father?
Yes, ma'am. Your father will be arrested for murder. I have all the information, all the evidence I need.
Not Mark's father.
No, ma'am. Your father.
Carl Kelly and Terrence Barker were sentenced to 35 years in prison for first-degree murder. Johnny Hubbard got 18 years for hindering apprehension and violation of a previous probation he was on. Carl Kelly died of congestive heart failure soon after. In 2014, Michelle bargained for a plea deal by pleading guilty to 3 counts of hindering apprehension. She avoided a capital murder charge and she was sentenced to 30 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 5 years. Next, enter the disturbing case of Kimberly Kessler, a woman whose mysterious past and calculated actions shocked a community.
Joleen
34-year-old Joleen Rebecca Cummings was a single mother of 3, working as a hairstylist at a local salon in Yulee, Florida, in May 2018. Her friend, Brooke Harley, reminisced how she met her in high school and had been friends with her ever since. She said Joleen was vivacious. People wanted to be around her. She was a very giving, loving person. She was amazing. According to Brooke, Joleen graduated in 2002 and got pregnant shortly after. Though young, the latter was confident she would be a good mother.
Brooke says Joleen was the kind of friend that would stick up for you.
She'd always be like, "Why are you letting them talk to you like that or do that to you? Like, you can't do that."
When Joleen's relationship with her daughter's father did not work out, she moved to Jacksonville with her child and enrolled in cosmetology school. Jolene's mother, Ann Johnson, recounted how her daughter was ecstatic about getting the job and was slowly building her clientele. On May 13, 2018, it was Mother's Day and Jolene's birthday. Ann stated her daughter always bought her flowers on that day. When Jason pulled into the driveway around 6 p.m. and said Joleen did not meet him in Hillard as per their predetermined arrangement to pick up the children, Ann started getting worried. Jason said, "I would have heard from her. Her daughter definitely would have heard from her." Ann knew something was wrong when Joleen did not pick up her calls and contacted the Fernandina Beach Police Department to file a missing person report. The 34-year-old was last noticed leaving her workplace around 5 p.m. on May 12th and was never seen again. According to the authorities, she has been murdered, but her remains have not been found to date. The police suspected her body was dismembered and secretly disposed of. The investigators decided to build a timeline leading up to Joleen's disappearance and contacted the owners of the Tangles Hair Salon to learn she had been tasked to close up the salon on May 12th at 5 p.m. Furthermore, the owners informed the officers that she was with a new employee named Jennifer Seibert and provided them with her address and contact number. Soon, the investigators found Joleen's beige Ford Expedition on May 15th in the Home Depot parking lot in Yulee. They checked the surveillance footage to discover Jennifer walking from the parking lot and going into a nearby gas station after parking the car on May 13th at around 1:17 a.m. Suspecting she was involved, the police returned to the salon to learn she had not reported to her work ever since. Kimberly, who was going under the fake alias of Jennifer Seibert, was charged with first-degree murder in September 2018 and was also charged with 2 counts of battery on a law enforcement officer after allegedly stripping nude and flinging feces at them. As per the show, her antics inside the jail and court, including going on a hunger strike, were to be ruled mentally incompetent to stand on trial. However, she was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole in December 2021. According to her inmate records, Kimberly is in her mid-50s and is serving her sentence at the Lowell Correctional Institution in Marion County, Florida. Up next is the chilling case of Kristen Ricci, a mother whose shocking actions shattered her family and left a community searching for answers.
A person convicted of second-degree murder is sentenced to life in state prison, but is eligible for parole after 15 to 25 years.
In 2018, Kristen Ricci found out that her husband, Michael Ricci, had been cheating on her for a while. After Michael was found out, he broke off the affair and tried to fix things, but the damage was beyond repair. It also didn't help that Michael was an alcoholic who drank so often and heavily that he had lapses in his memory. Before long, Michael and Kristen Ricci began to fight so often that their 3 children were no longer surprised when they started fighting. Unsurprisingly, Kristen never forgave Michael for the affair. She would bring it up almost every day, and it almost always caused a fight. Kristen became violent, and according to one of her children, she had grabbed a kitchen knife one time and threatened to stab herself in the stomach. These fights went on for 3 years until January 2021 when things turned deadly. On January 18, 2021, Michael and Kristen were arguing when things got extremely heated. Kristen took a kitchen knife and stabbed Michael in the heart and the back of his left shoulder. Sophia Ricci, the couple's daughter, was in the house when this happened. She heard her mother yelling and told her to call 911. When the police arrived at the scene, Michael Ricci was pronounced dead and Kristen was arrested. During the investigation, Kristen claimed that on the day Michael died, they had been having an argument and that Michael had a manic episode. She said that this had happened countless times, and she grabbed a steak knife to scare him off as usual. However, she claimed that instead of him backing away, he lunged at her, and she didn't know that the knife had penetrated his chest until he fell to the ground. Kristen Ricci was charged with second-degree murder, assault, and battery with a dangerous weapon. In court, Michael and Kristen's children gave emotional impact statements. Their first son talked about how Michael was a good man who served as a good role model to him and everyone around him.
My dad was still my hero. He's perhaps the most important person in my life.
During her verdict, Kristen Ricci was said to be teary and emotional when she learned that she was guilty of the charges leveled against her. In a trial that lasted 5 days in 2024, the jury took 2.5 hours to decide whether she was guilty or not.
3 CR 00153 on offense number 001, wherein the defendant, Kristen Ricci, is charged with the crime of murder. Is she guilty or not guilty? Guilty.
During Kristen Ricci's sentencing, the presiding judge admonished her, saying, Miss Ricci, within your own soul, you will live with the guilt and burden of Michael Ricci Sr.'s death for the rest of your life. Ultimately, Christine Ricci was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 20 years. Christine showed no remorse whatsoever and sat in court emotionless as she received her sentence. The stories of these wild female killers and their shocking courtroom reactions reveal just how unpredictable justice can be. But it doesn't stop here. The next video on screen uncovers even more unbelievable cases and moments you won't want to miss. Keep watching.